There's another image. Where do they send soldiers? Dave Davis, they send them to Tahiti to sit up on a park bench, right? No, they send them to places like Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan. They send them to places where they're going to face the fire and the flame of the enemy. Isaac Watts wrote a song called, "Am I a Soldier of the Cross?" Listen to these words. "Am I a soldier of the cross, a follower of the Lamb? And shall I fear to own His name or blush, to own His cause or blush to speak His name? Must I be carried to the skies on flowery beds of ease, while others fight to win the prize and sailed through bloody seas? Are there no foes for me to face? Must I not stem the flood? Is this vile world a friend of grace to help me on to God? Sure I must fight if I would reign. Increase my courage, Lord. I'll bear the toil, endure the pain, supported by Thy word. Thy saints in all this glorious war shall conquer though they die. They see the triumph from afar with faith's discerning eye." You must face the fire as a living sacrifice if you're to go on with Christ. Second thing, in this process of walking with Him, beware the false salt of a fake disciple. You understand that whenever something real exists, you got to be careful of the counterfeit. Fake watches, fake DVDs, knockoff jewelry. You ever buy something on eBay only to discover that what you thought was such a bargain was a fake? A few years back, Amy and I bought season 1 of the television show 24. We got a great price. That is, until we saw it and we understood why we got a great price. The box was the same kind of box that they send fireworks in, that real cheap cardboard. Comes off in your hands as you're holding it. The DVDs themselves were clearly made in somebody's basement. Everything was Japanese subtitles. I half expected when we plugged it in there wouldn't be Kiefer Sutherland, but some Chinese guy in a blonde wig running around with a gun. But it was a fake. Jesus warns us about buying into a fake discipleship. Listen to what He says, verse 50. Salt is good. It's necessary. It's vital. But if the salt becomes unsalty, with what will you make it salty again? How can salt become unsalty? Well, only if it's fake salt. Salt that isn't real. Salt that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Salt, you understand, that has the name of salt, but not the reality. It has the name, but not the reality. There are many who call themselves Christians running around just like that. In the ancient world, they didn't have pure salt as we do. They had a mixture. The salt that they dredged up from the Dead Sea was a mixture of sodium chloride, the real thing, and other things, especially gypsum, stuff we make drywall out of. And so if you weren't careful and you left your salt out and it got wet, the real sodium chloride could be washed away and you're left with nothing but gypsum, drywall powder, worthless, tasteless, good for nothing but to be thrown out. There's a lot of religion like that. It looks like the real thing. It'll get you as far as the doors of the church, but there's no reality to it. It has no taste. It's devoid of passion for Christ. There's no power of purity in it, no heart beating for holiness. It's empty, it's dead. It has the form of godliness, but none of its power. Listen, please. If what you call your faith in Christ has no purifying power, if it doesn't make you hate your sin and does not produce in you a burning passion for Christ, throw it away. It's a hellish substitute. And run to Christ for the real thing. That brings me to the last thing, and that is make sure you are holding on and holding fast to the true salt, which is the gospel of Christ. Verse 50, salt is good, but if the salt becomes unsalty, with what will you make it salty again? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another. You understand that salt was absolutely essential in the ancient world. Couldn't live without it. Without salt, you couldn't survive in the harsh climate. Without salt, there was no way to purify and preserve meat. You would die. And so making sure that your salt was real was not just an academic question. It was a matter of life and death. Rockport, listen, the same thing is true for us. Without the salt of the gospel, and I believe that's what he's talking about here. Jesus uses this image of salt to mean several different things. Matthew 5, he's talking about the influence of the Christian in society. The verse just before this one, he was talking about that part of the sacrifice, his living sacrifice. Here, he changes the image again, and I believe he's talking about the salt of the gospel. Because it is the gospel that brings purity. It is the gospel that preserves from sin. It is by faith in the gospel that we are cleansed and transformed into saints. It is an ongoing faith in the gospel that preserves us in Christ and keeps us in this salvation He has given us by grace. So that without the salt of the gospel, church, we've got nothing. When you realize that, don't you? Think of all the buildings that dot the landscape this morning with the name church on the front. Many bear the name of Christ, but lack the reality. Think of all the people running around who call themselves Christian. Some 76% according to a recent poll. And yet, you look into their lives, there's no power, there's no purity, there's no passion for Christ. What's missing? In every case, the gospel of Christ. The message of what God has done in Christ to rescue sinners like us from our sin. How God in Christ has taken upon Himself our death, put Himself in our place, crucified, dead, buried, raised on the third day, and reigning and calling to Himself a people for His own possession, eager to do what is good, eager to walk with Him, eager to be His. How God has dealt a death blow on the cross when He killed His own Son in our place and raised Him up, so that as we believe in Him, as we are joined to Him by faith, as we rest in Him by faith alone, we are saved. We become His people. Without that message at the center of everything, it's possible to have all kinds of activities in the church. It's possible to just fill up the week, all week, with this meeting and this group and that group, together each Sunday for what we call worship, and yet to have none of the reality the Bible describes as the life of genuine Christianity. It's possible. Have salt in yourselves. Have this burning, passionate reality of Christ alive in you. The power of what He has done for you. That's the thing that purifies and sanctifies and cleanses and unites us. Looking to Christ by faith. Continually looking, not just occasionally. Not just once when you walked an aisle and said a prayer. But daily. Not just during an evangelistic meeting where we get around to speaking of Christ and what He has done, but constantly, week after week. Beloved, think about it. I know this is my life without any doubt. I need the constant reminder of who Christ is and what He has done to rescue me, held up before me week after week in the songs we sing, in the encouragement I'm given, the discussions we have, the preaching of the Word. I need Christ placarded before me as crucified, dead, raised again, reigning, seated at the Father's throne on my behalf, pleading intercession for me, coming soon to rescue me. I need that held up before me, that and nothing else, because here's what I know about me. Otherwise, my sinful self would go back to trusting me if I am not regularly confronted with Him. Can I get a witness? That is me. And isn't that what is so wrong with so much of the religion that goes by the name Christianity but has not the reality? It's advice about this. A few pointers about that. How to have your best life.